I didn't cry when my father called me a disgrace. I didn't yell back or flinch. I just nodded, took a sip of flat soda, and walked out of the awards banquet like I hadn't spent the last 6 years pretending it didn't matter. My name's Natalie Quill. I'm 34. And last Saturday night, I sat in the back row of a defense technology conference while they handed my father a medal for lifetime contribution to national systems integrity. I clapped. Quietly. No one looked my way. He wore his gray suit. Tie knotted perfect. Lapel pin glinting under hotel ballroom lights. My name wasn't on the guest list. I got in because an old colleague remembered me from the Athena project and slipped me a pass. He mouthed, "I owe you," as I walked in. I didn't smile back. I was too busy keeping my heart from boiling over. They had a slideshow. Grainy photos of Dad at Pentagon briefings, early missile tests, legacy code reviews. Not a single mention of the Athena emergency fix. No credits, no engineers. Just him, standing near things, looking important. I was 27 when I built the patch that stopped a complete system loop from collapsing the relay. It wasn't flashy. Just a 6-hour no-break fix on a bad line of input protocol that someone else had greenlit too early. The bug didn't start with me, but the fallout landed right on my clearance file. That night, 6 years ago, I walked into a conference room thinking I was getting a commendation. My badge scanned red. My father was already seated across the table. No one else spoke. He didn't look up. "You're reckless," he said. "You acted outside your station. You broke chain of review." I told him the relay would have failed if I hadn't stepped in. He didn't deny that. He just said, "That's not your call. You're not command." I asked, "So what should I have done? Let it crash?" He stood up, straightened his coat, said, "A clean failure is easier to explain than an unauthorized fix, especially when it makes senior architects look bad." I remember that part so clearly, especially the next sentence. He said, "If you want to be taken seriously in this field, Natalie, learn when to keep your brilliance to yourself." That was the last time we spoke, until this past Saturday night. At the awards banquet, he didn't see me at first. I stayed behind a pillar near the dessert table, watched the room orbit him. Men in suits talking policy like war was a spreadsheet. Women with Department of Defense badges complimenting his stability under pressure. Then came the part I didn't expect. One of the junior officers started talking about Athena. "You know," he said, "they say it was a near miss. That patch saved the whole relay." My father held his wine glass like it was a gavel. He didn't even glance at me. Just said, "The girl who wrote that was undisciplined. Couldn't take correction. She cracked under pressure. Left before she could be dismissed." Laughter. Polite. Quick. Nobody pushed. I could feel my chest tighten like someone was pressing a vacuum seal around my lungs. I walked over. Put my empty cup on the table next to his plate. He looked up. "Nat," he said like the word hurt his mouth. "What are you doing here?" I shrugged. "Thought I'd see what a lifetime lie looks like in a tux." He flushed but didn't speak. A woman nearby shifted awkwardly. "You told them I cracked," I said. "That I ran." He raised his voice too calmly. "Because that's what happened. You didn't follow process. You embarrassed the review board." "No," I said. "I embarrassed you. And you rewrote history to look clean." That's when he said it. "You're a disgrace." Everyone around us froze. Forks paused midair. A man coughed and stopped halfway. I didn't flinch. I just looked down at my name badge, the one that still said guest. Then back up at him. "I know," I whispered. "But you know what's worse than being a disgrace, Dad?" He didn't answer. I leaned in. "Being forgettable." That's when I felt a hand on my arm. Gentle. Firm. I turned. A man in his late 60s, white crew cut, 4 service pins on his coat. He looked at me, eyes steady. "Excuse me," he said, loud enough for the room to hear. Are you Natalie Quill? I nodded. He extended his hand. May I shake your hand, Colonel? And in that instant, the whole room changed. I didn't move. I just stared at him, unsure if this was real or some ghost of what should have happened 6 years ago. Then I heard my father exhale, slow and tight, like a man watching a building crumble from the inside out. I shook the general's hand, and then the lights flickered, just once, like the system itself was reacting. I left that banquet like the room was on fire. Not rushed, not panicked, just burning inside. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look back. The general who shook my hand didn't follow. He didn't need to. He'd already said more in 5 words than my father had said to me in 6 years. Outside, the night air hit me like a slap. Cold, sharp, honest. I stood by the curb with my coat open and heart wide. My fingers were still buzzing. Not from the handshake, from being seen. I didn't drive home. I walked. 3 miles through quiet streets, past empty cafes and glowing windows filled with lives that didn't belong to me. I didn't even take out my phone. Just let the world be loud in its silence. Back at my apartment, I peeled off the layers, dropped everything but the old work tablet I hadn't powered on in months. I sat on the floor like I used to, knees up, back against the heater, and stared at the screen for a long time before touching it. I didn't open the project files. I opened the logs. Athena Project. Cycle 7. Date. 6 years and 4 months ago. There it was. The session where the loop first triggered. My override. My code injection. The emergency rollback I created on the fly. And then the edit. Not the one I wrote. The one someone else made. Line 212. Operator error. Unscheduled patch. Breach of protocol. My breath hitched. I'd read this line before. Dozens of times. But now I scrolled further. Into a block I'd never noticed. Hidden, locked behind a tag labeled DQ Legacy. It took 3 different decoding steps and a string of credentials I wasn't sure still worked. But they did. And suddenly the screen went black. I thought it crashed. Then a white prompt appeared. You are not authorized to access this legacy review path. Continue at own discretion. I tapped yes before my hand could second-guess me. What opened next wasn't a log. It was a memo. Internal, unlisted, stamped with a digital signature I knew better than my own initials. Douglas Quill. Subject, personnel adjustment, containment justification. He had written a request, a formal recommendation to reclassify my access status as non-compliant. Not because of any real failure, but because, and I quote, her solution exposes inefficiencies in command structure. Risk of external audit if event is preserved as is. Recommend reframing as insubordination to preserve leadership optics. My father didn't just cover for the failure of a broken system. He used me as a filter to protect his own standing. He turned my solution into a liability. Not because it was wrong, but because it made someone look small. I sat there, hands frozen on the keys, staring at the words like they were fire. I couldn't blink. Couldn't breathe right. I knew he'd been part of the fallout. But this wasn't passive approval. This was active sabotage. And then I saw the last line. Not in the body, in the metadata. Forwarded to C. Vaughn, Internal Audit Ops Curtis Vaughn. I hadn't heard that name in years. He was one of the only people on Athena who ever had my back. Quiet guy. Software architect. The type who didn't smile much but noticed everything. He once told me, "They only like you when your work makes them look good. The minute you outshine them, you're a threat." He disappeared shortly after I was pushed out. No email. No goodbye. Just gone. And now his name was at the bottom of the memo that buried me. I opened the internal messaging interface and typed his name into the system. Inactive. Then I tried his old routing tag. Still dead. I was about to give up when the tablet pinged. 1 line. No sender ID, just coordinates. And a timestamp. 0600 hours. There was no message, no subject. But the location, I knew it. It was the old staging site in Burke, Virginia. Athena's fallback sandbox, closed after the audit. I stared at it like it might disappear. But it didn't. Whoever sent that ping still had access to routing channels. That meant two things. 1, someone inside the system had been watching. 2, Curtis Vaughn might not have disappeared after all. And if that was true, then someone else knew what my father did. I got to Burke before sunrise. The old Athena fallback site looked exactly how I remembered it. Low, square, concrete, like someone buried a bunker and forgot to finish the funeral. The access gate was rusted but not locked. The key card I hadn't used in 6 years still blinked green when I scanned it. That alone sent a chill down my spine. Inside, the air was cold and metallic, still holding the scent of long-dead coffee and server heat. My boots echoed across the floor like footsteps in a mausoleum. The main lab was stripped, wires dangling like veins from the ceiling. Most of the old stations were dead. But one, Station 6, was humming. Just softly, like it had never been turned off. I walked over and tapped the screen. It lit up instantly. No login, no password. Just a blinking cursor and a message that filled in slowly, one line at a time. If you're reading this, they haven't scrubbed me yet. Then a file loaded. It was a voice memo. No timestamp, no sender tag. But the voice, low, clear, careful, it was Curtis Vaughn. I don't have long. If you're seeing this, Natalie, then you made it through. Or someone with your clearance did. Either way, this is my insurance. I couldn't stop what they did to you, but I logged every change, every signature, every clearance override. They thought they could erase you without consequence. They were wrong. My throat tightened. He knew. He had always known. I planted a ghost note inside the training archive. It's dead now, unless someone triggers it with the original code signature. If that happened, they'll know I left a trail. And they'll start looking. I paused the message. My hands were shaking. That must have been what happened at the banquet. When I pulled up the legacy log on my tablet, I must have brushed against the embedded signature, the one tied to my old patch ID. I'd relit a fuse I didn't know was still wired. I unpaused the audio. If you're still listening, then I need you to understand something. This wasn't just about your override. They used your mistake, hell, your brilliance, as a shield. Someone way above Quill signed off on the reclassification, and I think your dad took the fall just far enough to keep that person clean. That stopped me cold. Someone above him? He continued. There's a copy of the original training audit hidden on a drive. Physical. I couldn't upload it. Too risky. It's stored in locker 42B. The passphrase is the name of the patch you wrote, backwards. Athena 7 safe loop. I whispered it out loud like a prayer and turned toward the storage hall. Locker 42B was at the far end of the corridor, just past the auxiliary coolant room. I hadn't walked these halls since the day they pulled my badge. Every step echoed like old ghosts keeping pace. When I found it, the keypad was dusty but functional. I typed in the name backwards. It clicked open. Inside was a small silver drive. No label, just a post-it note stuck to the side. This ends with the truth, or it ends you. I shoved it in my coat pocket and turned to leave. That's when I heard it. A soft mechanical click behind me, like a safety being disengaged. I froze. There was someone else in the building. I stayed still, breathing shallow, and reached into my boot for the backup transmitter I'd carried since the day they erased my clearance. It only pinged one contact. Before I could activate it, a voice echoed from the dark hall behind me. You really should have stayed forgotten, Natalie. It wasn't my father. It was a voice I hadn't heard since my second week on Athena. Sharp, polite, laced with superiority. Director Malin Shaw. He was the senior advisor to the Systems Integrity Council, a name that never appeared in reports, a shadow operator, and the man who personally requested my removal. according to the last line of Curtis's memo. I stepped backward toward the emergency hatch behind the coolant tanks. You kept it quiet for 6 years, I said. Why come now? He stepped into the dim light. Same pressed coat, same perfect hair, same smug calm. Because you lit the match, sweetheart, he said. And now everyone's looking for smoke. I didn't blink. You buried the report, I said. He smiled. No, Natalie, I buried you. My fingers clenched around the transmitter, but before I could press it, the lights in the hallway snapped off. All of them. Complete darkness. Then a new voice crackled through the overhead PA, one I hadn't heard in over a decade. This channel's not secure, it said, but the warning still stands. Silence. Then, Natalie, run. I didn't run at first. I stood frozen under that emergency red glow like my boots were bolted to the floor. My brain knew better, but my body wanted to understand. Wanted to hear him say it again. Wanted to know how far this went. Director Malin Shaw had stepped out of shadows I didn't even know existed. This man had sat 2 chairs from my father during half the Athena briefings. Always quiet, always watching. Now he stood there like I'd wandered into his house uninvited. You buried me, I said, barely recognizing my own voice. He didn't deny it. He just took a slow step forward, hands clasped like a priest about to deliver a eulogy. I buried noise, he said calmly. You made things loud. You made the wrong people look incompetent. You forgot your place. My place? I whispered. I stopped a systems loop from taking out a national relay. I built the patch that kept that floor from going dark. And you documented it? He cut in, sharp and quick. Wrote your name into the heart of a disaster and turned it into a headline. We didn't need a savior, Natalie. We needed a silent fix. His voice was low, but it cut through me like cold steel. I took a step back toward the hatch door, one hand still on the transmitter in my coat. You're not authorized to be here, he added, almost bored. I'm not here as an engineer, I said. I'm here as a witness. That got a flicker of something behind his eyes. Annoyance, or maybe realization, that I wasn't scared the way he expected me to be. The drive in my pocket felt like it was burning through the fabric. That was the proof. The one thing that could tie every lie, every clearance override, every silent erasure back to the people who signed off on it. Including him. Mullen took another step forward. I know what you're thinking. That you'll go public. Blow the whistle. Drag this into some congressional hearing and hope someone listens. I didn't answer. Here's what actually happens, he said, his voice dipping to a whisper. You vanish, again, this time without the courtesy of a signature. He reached into his coat pocket. I moved first. The transmitter in my palm snapped active. Green light, full flash. That signal went straight to one contact. No name, no call sign. Just a single encrypted beacon. Echo Rift Live. Mullen's eyes widened, so he hadn't been sure who left the node open. You triggered it, I said, breath sharp. The moment I accessed that log and the ghost node relit, Echo Rift tagged you, not me. You don't have access, he hissed. Not officially, I said. But you should have read the override clause, the one Curtis buried under the DevOps manual 6 years ago. He reached for his coat again. That's when the side hatch door behind me blew open. Not loud, just fast. Precision-grade silent breach, like someone had been standing there waiting for my signal. 3 figures entered. Civilian gear. No names, no insignia. One of them handed me an earpiece. I clipped it on. Status, the woman said through the comm. Calm, clipped. No drama. Confirmed, I replied. Target is present. Drive is intact. Verbal threat logged. Mullen's face was no longer smug. No more sermons, just pale fury. He looked like a man who'd just realized the knife in the table had his fingerprints on it. You brought them, he said. No, I said. You did. The minute you stepped into this building, you activated a protocol you thought was retired. But Curtis never let it die. He was waiting for someone to step in with your credentials. He stepped back. I'll deny everything. Good, I said. That's exactly what's in your file. A full denial loop, pre-recorded. You hung yourself 6 years ago. His jaw clenched. The woman beside me spoke into her calm again. Authorization confirmed. Begin extraction. 2 agents moved in to restrain him. No struggle. He didn't even flinch. He just stared at me like a man trying to remember if this was real or a dream. You're not important enough to win, he spat. I don't need to win, I replied. I just needed the lights on. They walked him out through the corridor without a word. But that wasn't the twist. That came 2 minutes later. After they were gone and I was left alone in that cold, silent bunker, the third operative, tall, quiet, face half hidden behind his scarf, turned to me. He pulled off the scarf, and my whole body locked. Hi, Nat, he said. It's been a while. It was Owen, my brother. The same brother I thought had died in a classified transport accident overseas. The same brother whose name was blacked out on every file I ever tried to pull. He was alive, and he'd been working with them. I couldn't speak. Not right away. My jaw felt locked and my chest was burning from the inside out. Owen stood there like time hadn't moved. Same sharp jaw, same steady posture. But there was something in his eyes now. Something quieter, heavier. We hadn't seen each other in almost a decade. Last I'd heard, his transport was lost somewhere over the Baltic during a classified operation. The report came in cold. Presumed KIA. No service, no body. Just a folded flag and silence. And now he was standing in front of me. Real. I don't remember walking toward him, but suddenly we were inches apart, the air between us thick with too many unsaid things. I touched his jacket sleeve, just to be sure. He nodded once. It was the only way they'd let me disappear clean. I swallowed. You let me grieve you. For years, I had to, he said, softer now. Curtis told me what happened to you, what Dad and Shaw did. I couldn't come back until the system was ready to turn on itself. My legs nearly gave. I leaned against the rusted wall, heart pounding like a warning. You were part of Echo Rift. Since day one, he said. We couldn't fix the system by shouting at it. We had to become its shadow. I should have been furious. Maybe part of me was. But mostly, I just felt like my spine was finally starting to align again. Like something that had been knocked out of place years ago was clicking back in. We didn't hug. That wasn't us. We just stood there, breathing in the same stale air, letting the shock settle where it wanted to live. Later that night, back at the field station, I handed off the physical drive. The woman who took it said nothing, just scanned it into a black terminal, nodded, and walked out with it like it was evidence from a cold case finally warming. Within 48 hours, 3 names were flagged under internal tribunal review. Mullenshaw's clearance was suspended. His retirement benefits were frozen pending investigation. His access credentials were publicly revoked. A rare humiliation for someone of his stature. But that wasn't what broke him. What broke him was that the tribunal released the redacted memo, his own words, into the internal archive. The part where he wrote in his own voice that I was a threat to optics. They didn't have to jail him. They just let his peers read it. As for my father, the news didn't come with a trial or a hearing. He was quietly removed from every advisory board. His consulting contracts dried up overnight. An official email simply stated that his services were no longer aligned with institutional values. He didn't reach out. I didn't expect him to. But one day, maybe 2 weeks after everything settled, I got a plain white envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a photo. Me, age 10, sitting at our old garage workbench, soldering wires into a broken radio. My dad had taken it. On the back, in his unmistakable print, were 5 words. You were always command material. No apology, no signature. Just that. I didn't cry, but I kept the photo. Owen was reassigned to civilian oversight under a new alias. I was offered reinstatement into Athena, full clearance, lead engineer status. I turned it down. Instead, I took a consulting role with Echo Rift's civilian integrity branch. Quiet, faceless, clean. No titles, just truth and silence. The kind that builds something instead of erasing it. Some nights I still think about that banquet. The handshake. The room that forgot I existed. And then I think about the drive in my pocket, the hatch blowing open, and my brother's voice breaking through the dark. What I've learned is this. Justice doesn't always roar in. Sometimes it arrives in whispers, in files recovered, in names finally spoken in the right order. And closure? It's not an apology. It's knowing. That's all. Knowing what really happened and watching those who thought they could rewrite it finally get erased. If you've ever been written out of your own story or told you didn't matter, feel free to share your experience below. You're not alone. And if this story hit close to something buried in you, stick around. I'm not done telling the truth. Not by a long shot.